We are here today with a dear friend of mine, a man that I respect, who has been given wisdom really beyond measure. And Bruce Jones is a local leader in our community. He has been for years. You can tell a lot about someone's character by the way they live their life. And Bruce Jones has given his life to others for as long as I've known him, and even before that. He has invested in our community. He has invested in the youth and the children of this community and in families. His life speaks for himself, and it is an honor and privilege to have Bruce with us. I've asked him to today just to talk with me, friend to friend, because I think there needs to be some things said and some things addressed that, quite frankly, Bruce can address. And so I want him to speak today. But before we do that, I want you to get to know Bruce just a little bit more. So, Bruce, thank you so much for being on Crossing the Line today. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for asking me, Doc.
Oh, yeah. Would you tell us just a little bit about you? Give us your history. Tell us about Bruce Jones.
A little bit about Bruce Jones. Wow, it's easier for me to talk about somebody else and talk about. I'm a product of Lawrence County, Alabama, Cortland, actually a little place called South Pike. Grew up on a farm. My mother actually worked as a housekeeper for a farmer. My dad, I didn't live with him, but he passed when I was 8 years old. He was killed by a drunk driver. So it was my mom for up until I was at least 13, 14 years old, and she died of cancer. We grew up poor. My mother didn't have an education. My dad, of course, he didn't have one as well. So, money and resources was limited. So I think people use food stamps now. Back in my day, Larry, we called it commodity. We used to get that box of commodity once a month. So that was big time for us. But poverty was what I grew up in, and I guess if it wasn't for my athletic ability, I might have stayed in poverty because I love sports and I could run fast and jump high and all that kind of stuff. And as a result, I was a good basketball, football player, baseball, you name it. So I was fortunate out of high school to get a college scholarship to play football for the University of North Alabama. And that was the beginning of my road out of poverty because, I excelled on the football field and was fortunate enough to get drafted to play for the Chicago Bears and play for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a little while, finish my degree in social work at UNA. And then after my years of UNA and my NFL career didn't last very long because I got injured, I was able to get the job as the director of Decatur Youth Services. And I did that for 25 years. And I actually retired probably about 4 months ago from Decatur Youth Services. Now I'm fortunate to work part-time with Eagle Center for Leadership. So went back and got my master's degree and now working towards my counseling or PIP. So just continually to try to better myself, put myself in positions to be able to help and make a difference, but yet, enjoy what I do. And I've given my life as a servant. I've served people for the majority of my life.
Yes.
And because I was poor and had to depend on a lot of people for assistance and help along the way, I guess God gave me that opportunity to give back and to use my life and what I went through to help other young people, for sure, to know that they also can come out of poverty or come out of difficult situations. So that in itself has been a blessing. So I'm a servant. The three things that I try to make sure I do is speak into people's lives, encourage them, and build them up. So that's what I've been doing, and that's what I continue to do. And just want to continue to be used by the Lord, of course, and then just whatever else He has me to do.
That's amazing, Bruce. Let me get this right. You grew up in rural Alabama as with a single mom whose dad was killed earlier.
My dad was killed.
Your dad was killed. So you were raised, and then your mom. Did your mom? She had cancer, right?
Died of cancer, yes, when I was about, I say 13, but I know I was going on at 13, 14.
And so here's a young teenager, no parents, in poverty, and
Mhm.
yet you found a way to give yourself to others, to grow up to be this person who invested and changed lives through giving yourself away. How in the world, Bruce? What is it that you could have been angry, you could have been
Mhm.
bitter, you had every right. I mean, the system was against you, the odds were way against you, but yet here you are saying, "Wait a minute, I was in poverty, my parents were gone." And I chose to give my life to others. Help me with that.
Well, you know, I was angry, and I had a temper back when I was younger. Now, of course, I didn't understand all the anger at that time, but I had an outlet, and sports was my way of releasing my anger. It was legal. I could hit people hard on the football field. I could hit a baseball hard or whatever. I used to box as well, so I didn't know it at the time, but those were my way of channeling my anger and get my anger out. And those it helped me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Got older and wiser, I understood my anger and what was going on then. I was up to me to manage it and challenge it at that point. But you know, God gives us all gifts and talents. I believe that. And you have to figure out what yours is. And once you do, you can excel and be successful at whatever it is your endeavor. He gave me the gift of being fast and running and all that. And I used that on the sports field to deal with my anger, but it later gave me and also an opportunity for an education that I can actually now go and help people and use that education to make a difference in other people's lives. And
Mm.
it's always been my passion. I've always had a caring heart and wanted to help people. And unfortunately, sometimes when you do lead with your heart, it's taken advantage of quite often. So I've also been a victim to that. But, I still wouldn't change a thing, because that's
Mm.
what created me. So that's what I've enjoyed. I've been able to give back, being a servant leader and helping others.
What a beautiful example of crossing that line from you having the skills and all that you can do and your athletic ability and the skill you've gained from school, but yet crossing that line down to really care about people with your heart, even when it hurts at times, even when you get taken advantage of. That's a true example of a servant leader, Bruce. You always amaze me. And I want to talk to you. We have been in incredibly difficult week since Memorial Day and before. We've seems like we've got this perfect storm brewing with the COVID-19 and the quarantine and all of those things that we have endured as a country and in the world. And people have been kind of pent up. And then with the tragic and senseless death of George Floyd on Memorial Day, his murder just seemed to ignite. But I want to hear your wisdom on that. And before I do, though, in light of all that, I need to know about you. How are you? How are you doing?
How am I doing? Um, Honestly, I managed Larry through times like this through my relationship with the Lord.
Mhm.
During these times, a lot of people. Well, I can't speak for a lot of people. I speak for me. During times like this, you can get distracted and you can allow a lot of things to come into your circle. And a lot of those things are not good and healthy things. So I try to make sure that I've spent a lot of my times through prayer, through searching and Bible reading or just hearing ministry so that I don't allow it to overwhelm me. I don't allow what I see to anger me to the point where I'm bitter. Okay. And because what will that bitterness would turn into me looking at Larry and seeing a pale faced white brother and me want to take out my anger, my frustration towards you, my pale faced white brother, when you're not everybody who might be pale faced and whatever is not, let me just use the word Caucasian. Everyone who's Caucasian is not our enemy, and everybody who looks different from us don't want to hurt us. But if you're not careful when things like this happen, it becomes to be internal. You look at it holistically. You think everybody's the same way, and now you are reacting and responding in ways that are not healthy. And so, for me to make sure I don't get to that place, I have to stay in prayer. I have to stay focused. I have to meditate. I have to exercise, run. I do all those things to make sure I'm channeling my anger, my issues, my whatever I might be dealing with in a more positive, productive way. That's how I've been able to stay sane.
That's it's just once again back to who you are, and I know you so well, and the truth is, a pale faced guy like me, and to try to pretend like I understand what you're going through is just ridiculous.
Right.
Or even to make a judgment, or even to make an assumption of what it is that you are going through in a time like this is ridiculous. And so, I think it's a true lesson that we all have to learn. I don't know how you're dealing with this. I don't know what it feels like to be in a system that, you fought against the system all your life and came out on top. There are a lot of people who haven't, and you've given your life to serve those people. I've watched you for years. And so, Bruce, I just, I can't imagine inside of you, when when you walk through this, doesn't it take a ton of discipline just to be able to do what you said, to get in the Bible, to think about positive, but isn't that, you just have to have that, isn't that very, very difficult?
Well, it can be, but for me, I'm always looking at what am I going to look like on the other side? See, it's not what I'm going through now. I pray is temporary. But there's going to be another side to this. So who am I? What I look like? What have I done once I get to that other side? Well, that's going to be determined on what I'm doing in the process, how I'm handling it, how I'm channeling it, how I'm meditating, what I talk about and who I talk about it to. Larry, I can't have this conversation with everybody because we may not be on the same level where we can dialogue in peace. We can dialogue with respect of what each other have to say, even if we disagree. Everybody don't have that willingness to do that. So I have to even manage who I communicate with about something like this.
Wow.
Because what we really need is dialogue. What we really need is to hear everybody's perspective, even if it's different. At least I heard your perspective. I see it. I may not agree with it, but at least I respect it. Well, we can't even get to that because we let anger. We feel like, revenge or somebody owe us something or whatever, so if we're not careful, we will come out on the other side of this thing bitter, angry. We've lost so much. We lost so much gain in our relations with each other as Caucasian, African American, and we can't afford that. I can't afford that because I got too many brothers that look like Larry. I got too many brothers that look like Hispanics or whomever. I don't want to lose those friends. I know the value of having those people as my friends. So I have to watch how I manage all of this and how I process all of this. And I do most of it through making sure I pray, I get in that word, I stay focused on what I'm supposed to stay focused on. I even try to make sure this is where I am now. What do I want to look like and where I want to be on the other side? So now I've got a goal and I got a plan.
Bruce, that is amazing wisdom for all of us, and the fact that you are disciplined enough to do that. You have a plan. What are we going to look like on the other side? It's just thank you for sharing that insight from that vulnerability, and personally, I'm just glad you're doing that because my brother, I know how big you are and I know how small I am, and I sure would.
Well, the other part of that, Larry, I don't own a gun. I don't carry a gun, and I don't probably ever will. People see this big guy, they're not gonna, wrestle with me. They got me. So I better watch what I say and what I do because I don't have a gun to defend me.
Well, I love you so much. We've been friends a long, long time, but I love your honesty and your transparency. So I want to walk down that road with you just a bit, Bruce. Teach us, what do we need to know? What is it? What can we as Caucasians, as whatever, Hispanics, as African American, Help us, Bruce. What do we need to do in this time? Because quite frankly, there are some evil people. There's no doubt there's evil, but
Sure.
there are some good people who just don't know what to do as well.
Right.
So I really want you to speak to those people. I want you to speak to those who are saying, "What do we need to do, Bruce? Help us."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and this is just one black man's perspective and opinion. So, and they vary and they differ. But, I think I look at the riots. First of all, I look at what happened with George Floyd, and horrendous. Okay.
Yes.
No explanation.
Yes.
No explanation. Okay. And I hope everybody, regardless of what they're looking at now, at least look at that situation and say that was not right. If we can all agree to that, I think we're good. Now, let's take it further to the protest. Well, you were going to have protests, okay? It comes with it. The protest was about, first of all, if you look at this thing, and black people right now, we don't look at it in isolation. This happened over here. We look at it in totality. So if you look at the young man that was killed in Georgia, okay, that was shot. The young lady who was shot by police officers who she was inside of her apartment. Now, listen, I don't know all the information, but I'm just talking about the information that was presented to us by media and whatever, social media, whatever. Okay, so you got that. Then you got this situation with Floyd where it's out there. It's plain. The guy's on the guy's neck. The officer is on the guy's neck, and he's handcuffed. We're not seeing anything where he resisted. If he did, it was brief, not to the point where it warrant what that happened. So Larry, if you take all those situations, now it was already boiling. So now this keg just exploded. Now let's look at the riots, which I don't agree with, okay? But let's say you got, first of all, folks who really take advantage of that. They're there just to take advantage of that for their own purpose. They can probably care less about the march, okay? So you got some of those. But then you got others who probably joined in the looting who might have been the victims of police brutality, might have been some victims of harassment. Now, did they put themselves in a position to get some of that? Some of those guys did, because I worked with them. Let's take the ones who might have been victims of some of this police brutality. They took that as an opportunity. I'm going to get back at y'all. This is my time to show y'all what y'all do, So either way, I'm not justifying it, but I'm telling you the possibilities of all the different things that was going on in the minds of these individuals who were doing that. How do we and what should we do in something like this? First of all, we've got to make sure that people understand that I, as a black man, I am tired of feeling that to always be extra cautious just because I'm a target, I'm black. I also don't like the fact, Dr. Little, that I have to tell my son, this is what you need to do to stay safe. That's not right. I shouldn't have to tell my son who's a law-abiding citizen doing his thing, that when you get stopped, you put your hands on the steering wheel and once they give a command, you follow based on that. You don't have to tell your son that, Larry. My Caucasian friends don't have to tell their sons and daughters that. Why should I have to tell mine that? That's not right. Now, that's the kind of things that will anger people when they sit back and reflect on it and think about it. So then when you think about all that, then when something happens, now you've given every reason and excuse for people to just lose it. And that's what people have done. They have lost it now because they're so frustrated and so tired. I'm not talking about the ones who are just criminals and that's what they take advantage of. Right. I'm talking about good people who have gotten frustrated and tired because they're saying, why can't I be just like anybody else in this free America? Why do I have to be treated differently because my skin color is dark? If I don't warrant it, why should I be, beaten or died if it's not warranted? Why can't I tell you you're choking me and you respect that, or, tell you all. So that's part of the frustration. Now, how do we get to a place where we're not struggling with some of this? Larry, if we can't get to real, honest dialogue, like what you and I are doing right now, and not just you and I, it has to be people in political offices.
That's right.
People who are in leadership, who are difference makers, who are policy makers, who can use the pen to make differences. These are the big people that we have to be in these dialogues and these conversations with. We have to hear each other.
Mm.
We have to actively listen and hear each other to determine, yes, I see where you're coming from. But we don't want to do that, because sometimes when we start talking about this race thing, it becomes so tense. So everybody gets so afraid. Because I'm automatically, for an example, you would automatically assume, you're gonna blame me. You're gonna judge me. You're going to accuse me. Okay, so now you're somewhat on the defensive. Even before we get started, well, I'm thinking that you're not gonna have empathy for me. You're not going to see it my way, or you just plain old racist, so you don't care anyway. So we have these preconceived judgments and about each other before we even go into the conversation, instead of going into it with an open mind to really hear, to really listen, and see where can we compromise. And that's what we got to do. It's a compromise. I don't need it to be totally my way. You can't continue to let it has to be that compromise where we can agree on some things that we can do differently. And it might be implementing of some laws. It might be some different policies. It might have to be some things that are drastic or whatever, but it has to happen. But it can't happen until we have these dialogues.
Bruce, I have a question for you. Brilliant. I mean, a brilliant response. But it appears that, like you said, there are people on both sides who are on the extremes. They're just the out and out racists. They're the out and out, people that are the criminals, whatever they are, on both sides, whatever you want to, right? But there's a lot of people that aren't on the edge. There are a lot of people who are, and when I say on the edge, on the outside, they're kind of in the middle. And Bruce, isn't there a way that we could bring people who want to do what you've talked about, who say, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's not all or none here. Let's come together and come up with I love what you said. Let's truly listen to each other. What keeps that from happening from people who are not extremists, but who are wanting something? What is it that keeps us from doing what we're doing today?
Well, I don't want to make it sound like a cliche and something that you've heard over and over again, but for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing.
That's
we
good.
have decided to do nothing because we either think it doesn't matter or it won't do any good. So us good folks that you're describing right now, that's where we are. We're over here on the fence saying it really don't matter, or it's not going to make a difference, or it's not my fight, and we've got to come off the fence. We've got to get in the middle of this thing and say, you know what? I do want to make a difference. I do want to see if I can be a part of that change. And now, if you look at, even with the protests, there was Black people, white people, Hispanic people. There was all ethnic groups that was this thing. Okay. So there are some people that are already realizing we've got to come together on this thing. But now let's get to people who can make the policy changes. Let's get the people who can really impact this by, signing a piece of paper or whatever the case might be. We've got to get those people involved, Larry. And sometimes they're the ones who sit back and do nothing. Or when something happens, then they have their comments and their thoughts, but then they go back to status quo, and then nothing ever changes, And that's something that I have determined through this COVID situation where we've had all this isolation. I've been spending my time, through prayer and just a lot of other things. I've said, I don't want to go back to that person I was before this. This happened for a reason. Let me benefit from this. Let me not do what I was doing before this because it happened. There needs to be a change even in me. So whatever that change in me might affect somebody else changing. So the thing is, even with this situation, when this thing dies down, and it will, what have you learned? What have you gained that will make you a better person from this, a wiser person to do something different from this? If you can't come up with anything and you're just going to let yourself go back, well, then that death was in vain. All the looting and the burning of buildings, all of that was in vain. We got to stop letting things be in vain and make sure that when it's all said and done, now, how can we better ourselves? How can we better the situation? What can we learn from this? And what will we not go back? It goes back to that dialogue. It goes back to us talking.
You know, you make such good sense, Bruce. And I think as we look at this and we walk away from this senseless tragedy, and we don't recognize something you said, and I think that we all need to hear is this is not, the tragedy is horrible, and I have no idea how Mr. Floyd's family is dealing with this. I can't imagine, but it's not an isolated event. This is a systemic issue, and we have to take a systemic solution to in order to get where we need to be, right? And
exactly.
So that dialogue you talk about, what do you want to happen? Speak to that a little bit more in terms of what kind of dialogue can you envision, and let's talk about it in a little bit more specific terms if you can.
Okay. Check this out. Even when you called me earlier to talk about doing this, I was in dialogue with a Caucasian friend of mine. I say friend, teammate out at where I do my part-time work. And we were actually having this very same conversation, okay?
Okay.
Her mind was open to hear what I had to say. I was open to hear what she had to say. And we had some good dialogue. Now, she's not a pen pusher. She can't make no policy. She can't whatever. But at least she can listen. So I was telling her, now what you can do to benefit, based on our conversations, that you need to have the same conversation with somebody who don't think and believe the way you think and believe, okay? You tell a few of your friends about our conversation. Hopefully that can help change some of their thinking. And now more people are hearing these conversations. They're more open to listen. And then that's how we make the change. But Larry, what about getting our council people? What about getting our mayors? What about getting our representatives? Will they have these kind of conversations, Larry, or will they be too afraid that they might alienate some of their white voters who might say, well, you're too much to help the black folks or minority. So, because honestly, we're still there. That's a big part of this. We don't want to just step out, especially when we're in those political situations and having those political office. A lot of times, either we actually feel the same way that people feel who might, have some racism going on, or too afraid to speak against it because we're afraid we might lose some votes. So now we got to play that juggling act of, I got to play this balance. Well, yeah, I understand you got to make sure that you are, that you're respecting all sides, but it doesn't mean you don't listen. It doesn't, you don't have the conversation, because the conversation will help you to understand actually where we're coming from and what we're really asking for. And it may not be what you think it is. But when we're afraid to even do that, to come together in this political arena, in this policy-making arena, we're not going to get very far. Now, some people say, well, you can't legislate morality. I'm not talking about legislate morality. I'm saying people who are in positions and leadership coming together, talking about your plant managers, all those folks that have anything to do with equality for employment, all that. Those are the kind of people that we've got to have these conversations with, because they make a difference, okay, in how the job market is and how many who gets the job, who doesn't get the job. We don't have these conversations with the right people, with the right player. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to be somewhat controversial, not from but a lot of people don't want to look at this way. And I need somebody to tell me why I'm wrong on it, okay?
Okay.
Now, as a believer, now I'm speaking as a believer now, okay? There was two people that God created. He created the man Then he created the woman. He created the woman from the man. Those two people supposed to have, according to my belief, started the race. Okay? If those two people started the race, how many races are there out there?
That's right.
Why are we stuck on this black race, white race, Hispanic race, whatever? If you are a believer, it's one race. You are an ethnic from the Caucasian lineage. I'm an ethnic person from the black, or we'll say black ethnicity, Hispanic from. If we look at things where you got these ethnic groups, okay,
right.
over here, over there, and then they got their different cultures, and the cultures don't necessarily have to be the ethnic, because if you hang around with me, you start doing a lot of stuff that I do, guess what? You're part of my culture now. But we're so caught up in the race thing, the race word is divisive. If I can keep you divided, if I can keep you thinking that I'm superior and you're lower than me, that because of my skin tone, my race is more powerful and whatever, now I keep control, I keep dominance, so I'm going to keep things as it is because I'm not losing that control and I'm not losing that power. And race words sometimes help with that mindset. When we can let go of some of that verbiage and just say ethnicity and cultures, matter of fact, even when you say it like that, ethnic groups or culture versus race just carries a total different meaning than ethnicity and cultures and things like that. These are the kind of conversations we got to have in order for me to see systemic changes, to see people really beginning to look at people differently. You've got to also look at some of the words and what words need to be changed.
You know, Bruce, you said something that that really stuck with me. And when you talked about, we all came from two people, Adam and Eve, right?
Right.
And when we start talking about race, and then you said power and control, it's really arrogant. It's really narcissistic to think my race is superior to your race, or it really is, because we all came from, if you're a believer, and perhaps you're not, and there are many who will listen to this that aren't, and I respect that, and you do too. But
exactly.
But if we believe, especially as followers of Jesus, that we all came from Adam and Eve, how dare us think that our race, our skin color, as someone said, if you cut yourself, you bleed red. If I cut myself, I bleed red. That's the way God made us. That's brilliant, Bruce. That's a great takeaway. I have a question for you. Help us again. You now have a platform, and let's say, and you well may, but you have a platform with the Alabama State legislative body. You have the opportunity to tell them what you want to tell them, to help them to hear what they need to hear. And included in that, we'll say our governor is listening in as well. The legislative body, the Senate, our governor, to the state of Alabama. We'll start there. What are you going to say?
Wow. First of all, thank you for giving me your audience, giving me your ear. And I pray that you are here to actively listen. Okay. Now, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not looking for reparation at this point. I'm not looking for none of that. What I'm looking for is for you to take a look at what is going on in our community, the Black community, the Caucasian community, look at in our schools, look at in our employment opportunities, our university, look at all of those things. And you tell me, do you not see some disparities? Now, I'm not asking you, I'm just saying, look at it open-mindedly and see if you see any disparities. If you don't, then we don't need to have this conversation and everything is fine. But if you see some and they're obvious, we talk about it. Can we talk about why is that way and the importance of changing it? Because it's not fair. So that would be something and that's not me trying to throw stone. That's just me telling you, you got the same lenses. Now, we tend to look at things with different lenses, but let's look at this situation and just see, is there some disparities? Matter of fact, I'll tell you, I'll go local. I'll say, look at the city of Decatur's educational achievement. Look at the minorities, then look at the Caucasians, look at the disparity. Now, we can say, well, it's just because white people are just much, much smarter than black people. You're going to have some who are, you're going to have some who are not. Okay, yeah.
Right.
To that degree, there's something wrong. What do you think is wrong? So that's the kind of conversation we got to have. And people got to be open and honestly listening to say, and not feel that they're the blame, and not feel that I'm angry at you. I'm not. I just want you to look at this and see what I see. And now let's talk about how we can change it.
Beautifully said, Bruce. And I would suppose, and you tell me if I'm wrong, if you take the opportunity, and you had the opportunity to be at the next level of our government in the federal branch, I'm assuming that the representatives, the Senate, the executive office, the president, you would have much the same message on a larger scale, on a more holistic
Same
scale.
message.
Yeah. And this is not a message that what I'm hearing from you, you fix this for me. But what I'm hearing is this is not necessarily a message. Are there bad cops? Yes. Are there good cops? Yes. But this is a bigger issue than police brutality.
Bigger issue.
Well, that's an issue. We validate that. No, it is. There are other things. Am I right?
Right. And if there's so many different factors and so many different layers of this thing, Larry, that sometimes we get the real message lost in the translation because it is so big and broad. So my thing is how we can begin to narrow it down and bring it to some kind of focus where we can really chew on it, okay, is let's take what is the reality of what's going on in our world. Let's look at the disparities. Let's look at the inequality. Let's look at the difference in black males being killed, white males. Now, unless you want to tell me that white males never resist, white males never run, white males never do all the other things for them to get killed, then we don't have a conversation once again, because black folks resist, black folks run, and white people don't.
No.
Does that sound logical?
No, not at all.
So it's honestly looking at those type things to me, Larry, and just having those conversations about it. Now, as black people, let's take some ownership and responsibility as well. What are we doing and what have we done to put ourselves in some of these positions? Well, trust me, we are doing a little bit on our end as well, or not doing the things we need to do on our end as well. So just like I need the Caucasian brothers and sisters to be open-minded to hear what I got to say, I also got to have my black brothers and sisters to be open-minded here too, because we don't want to hear certain things that we need to hear, Larry, that we are doing that's creating some of our issues as well. We're doing some things that we don't need to do, that we need to do differently. So it's accountability on everybody's part. And we got to have that honest conversation where you, as my white friend might say, well, Bruce, you don't think that you doing this and doing that might create that? And I say, well, you know what? Yeah, I agree. I that probably do create some problems for me. And then I've got to be able to accept that and stop and not feel that, oh, you're condemning me, judging me, you're just being whatever. It's that open, honest conversation. And I mean, it has to be with that, and I keep emphasizing that open, honest, listening with open mind and conversation. But that's what I would, so that same message that I'm giving on the local, I would give it on the state, I would give it on the federal, because it's the same thing. It's the same issues.
And I hope that you'll have the opportunity to share that. That would be amazing. I have a hard question for you.
Okay.
So as I look at it, and you're right, everybody has different lenses. And the protests that are going on are valid, and they're they're in the daytime, they're respectful. They're these people that you said, the diversity is there. The age difference is there. There are all types
Yes.
of people saying, we protest this and we want this our voice to be heard and this to change. And that's what's America. I mean, that's what we're founded on.
Mm-hmm.
But at night, when it turns violent, isn't that hurting the very cause these protesters are spending their time and energy about? Help us with that.
And I haven't looked at this close enough to really look at the people that from the daytime to the nighttime. But Larry, I guarantee you that many of those folks who are coming out at the nighttime are different from those who are marching in the day.
Right.
Okay. I truly believe, and I'm not going to give these guys a name. I don't, they don't, federal, from the White House and whatever, they don't called it a certain Antifa or whatever. I don't know enough about that. What I do know is that there's plenty of people who look for opportunities like this to take advantage of something that could be more beneficial if we just, stay peaceful, stay whatever. There's many of them are criminals. Many of them, they plan these things, they organize these things, and it hurts the cause. It hurts what we really are trying to accomplish. Now, let's say that there is a moment of the vandalism. The moment, and notice what I use the word carefully, Larry, I said moment. The moment for the vandalism is when you stop listening to me and I have no other options. Because I know you don't want your building burned. You don't want to lose money. You don't want to, that's too much. So if I take that approach, if I get to that level where I've got to, oh, shucks.
You're still with me.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. I got too passionate, man, and I hit something over here.
I love it. I love you, passion. Go ahead.
Anyway, so if I get to a point where I'm beginning to affect you financially, even safety-wise or whatever, you're going to listen to me. You're going to hear what I got to say. And I think Dr. King even made that statement, and I can't put it as eloquent as he did it, but his statement was something along the lines of, when the people that have a voice and that voice is not being heard, and the next step that you will see is the vandalism, the loot, whatever. And he's not justifying it, and I'm not justifying it. It's not good. We don't need to do that. But that's where people just felt like they're not being heard. And then the other group are just opportunists. They're criminals. They're trying to take advantage of a situation. And unfortunately, that's sad. They could probably care less about George Floyd. They're more interested in what can I do and how can this benefit me for this moment. So if we are going to vandalize, if we are going to do that, that's for a moment. That's not every night. We can't plan to go vandalize every night. That's a criminal act. Okay. So it's gone. That part has gone too far, and we've got to pull it back.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it, and they're hurt. Those that are hurt and those that are angry, they end up hurting their own communities, their own selves, yes. And of course, you have the others that don't really care. They're taking advantage and looting and that kind of thing. I get that, but that really is helpful. So, Bruce, what I've heard you say is, if we want to do something, we talk, we have dialogue, we understand, but then we take that to people who are just like us, our own color, our own culture, whatever you want to call that, our own ethnicity. And we have those hard conversations about, wait a minute, because you have the most influence with people that are within your community. Am I right? I mean,
exactly.
You have way more influence than I would. And so we have to go to the people with whom we have influence and have these hard conversations. Is that what you're challenging us to do?
That is my challenge. That's what I challenged my friend earlier today. And that's what I would challenge anyone. Now, and not necessarily the like-minded people that already think like you, but it's those who have made up in their mind that they think differently, even if it's environmental, if that's the way my daddy thought, that was the way his daddy thought, and that's the way I'm thinking. Well, that goes back to the woman who kept cutting the part of the ends off on the ham.
That's right.
It was a generational thing. Well, my mama did it, her mama did it, so I do it. Well, does it make the ham taste better? No, it don't make the ham taste better. Your mama did it because back then she didn't have a big enough pan and it wouldn't fit into the oven.
That's right.
She did it. So we got to stop thinking that, I'm doing it. No. Why are we doing it? So it's just conversation. Let's have some more conversations.
Let's do it. Bruce, you have been amazing today. You always teach me, my brother, and you've taught me again today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this and being vulnerable, open, honest, challenging. You are amazing. Now I know why I've loved you for so long. So thank you, my friend.
Well, a lot of who I am today, believe it or not, have something to do with Dr. Larry Little too. Because many, many years ago, he spoke into my life. And I never forgot what he spoke into my life. And it's amazing that those things that he told me I needed to do and what he would do as a result of me doing what I needed to do, it happened.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, brother. I appreciate you. That's why I don't have time to be caught up into disliking my Caucasian brothers and sisters because of whatever. I ain't got time for that. You bring something into my life if I allow you. I can bring something into your life if you allow me. Yes. And you think I'm gonna miss the opportunity and the chance for that? No, sir. But that's what happens when we decide, well, you look different from me, so you have nothing to offer me. I just told you what you offered me, and thank you for letting me give you something back in return.
What a blessing. You're a jewel, Bruce Jones, and I can't thank you enough. And I look forward to us working together to make a difference in the lives of others. Thank you for crossing the line today. And you know that you have made a difference. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Talk to you later.